What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I got a bunch of updates, some stuff from yesterday that I wanted to get to and make a video for, but I didn't have a chance. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Just gonna dive right in. The first thing I want to talk about is another star player from college has decided to opt out of the 2020 season. Wake Forest wide receiver Sage Surratt opts out of college football season. Potential first round pick. Wake Forest wide receiver Sage Surratt announced Wednesday that he is opting out of the 2020 college football season to focus on preparing for the 2021 NFL Draft. While the Big Ten and Pac-12 have both postponed their 2020 fall sports seasons because of the coronavirus pandemic, the ACC, SEC, and Big 12 are still planning to play college football in the fall. Despite the fact that Surratt plays from an ACC team in Wake Forest, he will not play in 2020, citing uncertainties and risks tied to COVID-19. Bleacher Report NFL draft expert Matt Miller referred to Surratt as a first-round talent after news of Surratt opting out broke and ranked him as the number 14th overall prospect on his way too early big board for the 2021 draft. So again, another major athlete, star athlete from a school has decided to drop out. Again, another domino has fallen, etc., etc. I wanted to quickly let you know about the NFL. There's a bunch of things that the NFL is talking about. Some things they're mulling over. We're going to get to a few of those in a minute. One of them is that I don't have like an article necessarily for right now, but I wanted to mention is they're not going to allow cheerleaders and mascots on the fields for any of the games, which obviously I think makes sense. So that's good. Let's see. The next thing I want to talk about, I think this one's kind of silly, and frankly, my overall perspective is, if you're at the point where you got to make these kinds of decisions, none of this shit is fucking worth it. It's just this whole season, no matter what, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you slice it, this entire season is going to just be a giant fucking clusterfuck. So what am I talking about specifically, though? The NFL is considering pumping fake crowd noise into stadiums per report. Okay, so look, I get that crowd noise is a big deal, but and it affects the quality of the game. But if you have to do this as a resolution because you're dealing with a pandemic that means you can't have people in your stadiums, then just don't have the fucking season at all. Like, it's just, I think it's stupid, and I think it's, anyway, whatever. It's, whatever. You guys know how I feel, but, I mean, like, I don't know. I get that they're going to want to have, like, you know, the fan noise and whatever, but I think it's silly. I think it's, like, you know, super cheesy, and it's, you know, a super silly and cheesy resolution to a problem that shouldn't exist in the first place, because the season shouldn't exist due to the fact that there's a deadly virus going around, etc. And it's literally going to get a fuck ton worse in the fall and in the winter during the season of the time of year where the, you know, illness and sickness tends to run rampant just in general. Like, anyway, whatever. Let's get through this because I don't want to take too much time going off on these side tangents. You guys already know how I feel. And any other year, an NFL team pumping in crowd noise would be a scandal. In 2020, it could be the norm. The league is reportedly considering a policy that would bring fan noise into stadiums in a year where many teams will have no fans. According to ESPN's Adam Schefter, due to the coronavirus pandemic, most teams are opting out of welcoming in fans for at least the first month of the upcoming season. But okay, I'm not going to comment on that. However, the league did not make an overarching policy regarding attendance. They are allowing teams to decide on their own, with the assistance of local guidelines, what they would like to do when the regular season begins. The Las Vegas Raiders and Washington football team have already announced they will not welcome in fans for the entire 2020 season. The defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, on the other hand, will have a 22% capacity in their 76,416 seat Arrowhead Stadium when they host the Texans in week 1. And we'll see how long that lasts. I think that's, whatever. You guys know how I feel. The NFL has an advantage over other major North American sports because they have been able to see and learn what works from leagues that have already resumed play amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, pause on that for a second. On one hand, that is true. And one of the things we'll talk about in a minute is they're discussing doing a bubble for the playoffs. We'll get to that. But the NFL and the same principles, the same basic principles apply to why I vehemently disagree with the strategy of tanking in the NFL, right? One, the success rate in the other sports is actually not even all that high. It's been proven to not be that high. There are some examples of where it has been successful in baseball, but like the Astros, for example, are an example, but they've also had a lot of controversy surrounding their organization and the things that they've done, etc., etc. Anyway, whatever. Point is, right, there have been very few examples, but from other sports that are not like full fucking contact, and the rules are way different. The roster sizes are different. Free agency's structured different. The way their contracts are, are structured different. There are so many different variables that make the philosophy of tanking in the NFL just not a feasible thing. And there have been no examples in the NFL of it being successful. The Browns are not an example of that, and the Dolphins are a million fucking light years away from proving that their version of it can be successful. Anyway, so, but that applies, to this too. So yes, they may have had the opportunity to see how other sports are doing it, but, baseball, for example, is not a fucking anywhere close to a contact sport. I mean, there's some little contact here and there. You got to tag a guy with the ball sometimes. Every now and again, you'll run into each other. And then obviously there's contact in the bullpen and so on and so forth. But it's not but the bullpen doesn't count because every team has their sidelines, right? There's the bench in basketball and, the bench in football. That is kind of outside. The point is that football is a full contact sport. So if one team has it and another team's doing great, that one team that's doing great could 100% get totally fucked over by the other team that's not doing great because they're going to be in close proximity to each other a lot. They're going to be literally intentionally running into each other. Whereas baseball, you try to stay away from the guys on the opposite team. Every now and again, you might run into each other, sure. Whatever, and you do got to get relatively close, but you are still outside, and generally you stay the fuck away from each other, right? Way different. Anyway, among other things, there's other things too that play into that. But anyway, MLB decided to go with no fans to start their regular season, and many teams put cardboard cutouts in their place. The NBA has a virtual screen where fans can be featured live to get their timely reactions to plays. The NBA, WNBA, and NHL are all being played in bubbles, meaning no fans are permitted and players can't leave. The NHL went a step further and has 2 hub cities, one for Eastern Conference teams and one for Western Conference teams. And look, to be fair, because I am fair, the NHL and the NBA seem to be doing all right with it, so we'll see how it goes. The MLB has certainly had significant issues, and I'm going to venture to guess that the NFL is also going to have significant issues. Now, also, it will be interesting to see if the NHL and NBA, right, because the NBA did have an outbreak in their bubble. Well, it'll be interesting to see if they are able to maintain that kind of, whatever, the bubble. If they're able to maintain the insulation from the outside world, then throughout the winter time, that will be fascinating, because I do feel like it's going to ramp up and amplify like nobody's business once the winter time comes, the fall and the winter time comes. Anyway, so yeah, that's that. Let's move on, because I did mention that the NFL is discussing bubble options for playoffs. So let's get to that. Yahoo Sports is reporting NFL plans for playoff bubble must start now, even if league's COVID-19 numbers look good. Let's see. It feels like a lifetime ago, but there was a point in the Major League Baseball season when combating the COVID-19 pandemic was off to a fantastic start. MLB announced its initial wave of testing in early July produced a manageable 1.2% rate of positives, while the turnaround time for results was smoothing out and players appeared to be buying into safety protocols. All in all, it was a start to be celebrated and an encouraging sign that perhaps a pro sports league didn't need a bubble to keep its act together. And now we know that now we know that it was right about then that some hubris was kicking in and the bottom was about to fall out. From a swath of player positives on multiple teams, postponement of games, players caught breaking protocols, a frightening COVID-related heart condition sidelining a Boston Red Sox pitcher, and even brief consideration of potentially halting the entire season. As worst case scenarios go, baseball went from optimistic to nearly catastrophic quickly. And it has definitely the potential to be far worse with the NFL because of the close proximity. Now, less than 7 weeks later, there's an increasing debate about the viability of pulling off a vast postseason bubble for baseball in hopes of keeping the situation in hand down the stretch. Every bit of this is reverberating inside the NFL ownership and Park Avenue executive ranks, not to mention the coaching staffs and players who are striving for normalcy. While the start has been one of optimism and pleasant vibes for the NFL, the league most closely representing the bubbleless environment of pro football is slamming headlong into brick walls. While the NFL is happy about a COVID-19 reserve list that is amazingly near single digits, it is just one bad decision away from tide turning. And that mistake could be anything from a simple testing error that allows the virus into a building to something more mind-numbing. We've already seen testing errors, albeit in the more harmless realm of false positives rather than a false negative that allows COVID to breach the walls of a team facility. And we've seen the stupidity of immaturity thanks to a Seattle Seahawks rookie who reportedly tried to sneak a woman into the team hotel in a team hoodie. And he was cut, interestingly enough. I think that's probably a bit extreme. Especially because they don't want to hold themselves to that kind of standard, right? They're not going to fire themselves for the fact that they've allowed all these guys to catch it in the first place, right? Guys have come on and off this fucking list, right? And they're going to have guys get it in the fucking middle of the season. It's almost unfathomable to think that that's not going to happen at some point, right? So they don't want to fire themselves for taking those kinds of risks, but they're perfectly happy to fire the young kid who's, I don't know if it was his girlfriend or just some random chick, whatever. It doesn't fucking matter. He's trying to live his life, and that's part of what I was saying to begin with, is it's irrational and unreasonable to then expect thousands of guys, because there are a few thousand players across the NFL, for example, to especially young guys who are just coming into a bunch of money, etc., who are now on pro football teams, blah, 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 to then all 100% have the maturity level to be able to not do something foolish and think that they're going to be okay. That is absurd. The way to prevent that is to not put them in the position to begin with to make the mistake. But they don't want to hold themselves accountable or fire themselves. None of the fucking GMs are going to fire themselves for allowing any of this to happen. None of the team owners are going to sell the team because they've allowed any of this to happen. The NFL's not going to fucking fine itself millions of dollars, right? None of that shit's going to happen. But they'll be perfectly happy to cut a rookie who made, a mistake, and it could be potentially egregious. But it's the fault of the NFL far more, and the owners far more than it is the kid just trying to live his life, etc. Anyway, I think you get the point. What it tells the NFL is that the short and long play is worth considering, and while the league is planning for everything that can happen right now, baseball is suggesting a parallel track that pro football should be laying down right now, specifically postseason bubble plans. The NFL, I'm frankly pretty positive that one of two things is gonna happen. Either they somehow miraculously manage to fucking keep this thing, under wraps and play out the full season, whatever. Maybe they do implement a bubble for the postseason. But what my point is it's either going to, if it's going to all come crumbling down, it's going to happen in the regular season. There's 17 weeks, 16 games for every team. They're going to be traveling across the country. There's going to be all kinds of different things going on. If there's going to be outbreaks and teams, if the postseason gets fucked up, it's most likely going to be because of the regular season and during the regular season rather than then. Anyway, so NFL playoff bubble is on the table. If MLB is in the midst of looking at a postseason bubble to mitigate a critical failure at the most important juncture of the schedule, the NFL should use its advantage of time and start that planning right now. After all, there's no use in ignoring the canary in the coal mine when it's foreshadowing every problem that could be coming in the pipeline. And I totally agree with that. Let's see if they do that. Unfortunately, capitalism doesn't really give a fuck about the future, right? All it cares about is now. How can I make as much money as possible in the here and now? And pretty much every policy and decision and action that the NFL and the owners have taken has proven that. So are they going to, do any kind of, I mean, sure, they're thinking about it and it's on the table, but are they actually really going to do any legitimate planning between now and then? Or are they going to just procrastinate and be like, it's not really a big deal. We're confident in the bullshit that we're fucking putting forward and we're just going to, fuck off with it until, then, right? We'll cross that bridge when we get there, kind of thing. Okay, I mean, I don't think that this is one of the times where you can use that philosophy, but if that's what they do, I think that it's going to be a disaster. And this whole postseason, but like I said, I also don't believe that, if the entire, first of all, you guys know I think that the season eventually is going to end up getting shut down because I don't think they're going to be able to control it. Hope they can prove me wrong, but that's what I think. I also think that if that does happen, it's going to happen in the middle of the season and look, there are other factors, not just the virus. The number of injuries is going to play a big role in things. Players going on and off the COVID list, right? Like just recently, Sam McGuavin, linebacker, just went on and then right back off the COVID list. That's going to happen throughout the entire season, right? So, I mean, look, and then if there's outbreaks on teams and then an entire team has to sit out multiple weeks, that completely fucks. If that happens to one team, if there is an outbreak on any fucking squad and the entire team has to quarantine for 2 weeks, completely fucks the entire season. Right? And so, I mean, to be fair, I'm sure if it happened to one team, there's a way they could work around it. But the likelihood of it happening to one team and then not multiple teams is kind of ridiculous. But the season is much shorter. Like, it's far different in baseball, right? Like, they can reschedule things a lot. They have, like, hundreds of games over the course of a season, right? Whereas there's, each team has, like, in baseball is what, like 50, 60 or more games or something like that during the regular season. Every NFL team has 16. There's a huge difference, right? So there's a lot more flexibility in the MLB schedule than there is the NFL schedule. Anyway, as I've said several times before, if the NFL can pull off an entire 16-game schedule and an uninterrupted postseason inside this pandemic, it will go down in history as one of the single greatest achievements of everyone involved. I do think that is true on its face, right? Like, that statement is true. If they can pull it off and they can pull it off safely, etc., etc., etc. But the minute that somebody dies, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. It is not a success. Additionally, though, nobody should expect that this season is going to be like, it's going to be a fucking hot mess. The entire season is going to be a hot fucking mess. The quality of football is not going to be anywhere close to what it normally is. Like, and it's going to be a mess no matter what. It's going to be a fucking clusterfuck no matter what. So just off of that, it's going to be a little bit difficult to say that they were able to pull it off because it's going to be a very low quality season all around. But if they are managed to pull off an entire 16-game schedule and, postseason and Super Bowl and, there are not major outbreaks and, entire teams don't have to get quarantined and, nobody dies, okay, then I guess, you can say there was some relative success there. Let's see. That it's without question, undeniably, it would be more successful than having no season at all. and when it comes to the football aspect of it, right? From that perspective. That includes the league office, team owners, players, the union, and every single support staffer or personnel employee in between. There's simply no overstating how remarkable it would be. Yet even with that knowledge, there's little argument that an asteroid strike in the postseason could wipe out all of the immense efforts that have taken place since March, particularly if that asteroid were to hit before one of the conference championship games or the Super Bowl. Even a medium-level disruption in January, like a playoff team losing a handful of backups on the doorstep of a conference title game, would create the question of whether COVID warped the legitimacy of the NFL's biggest stage at the last moment. I mean, bruh, like, I mean, that's the thing, right? Because even if they manage to get all the way through, we get to the Super Bowl, but then, like, right before the Super Bowl gets fucked up because there's an outbreak or, you know, whatever. Like, or, but that's the thing, though. With guys expected to go on and off the list, and then the rash of injuries on top of it that are expected to be higher than normal because of the lack of preparation time, etc., etc. Like, it's going to sway games. It just is. It is. It is unimaginable to think that there will not be games decided because of COVID-19 and the various different ramifications that have come from it. The reality has to be weighing on some NFL franchise corners, even in mid-August when things are going well. That might explain why New Orleans Saints coach Sean Payton suggested creating a postseason bubble in the NFL's last conference call for the league's competition committee. That piece of news was revealed by NFL Vice President of Operations Troy Vincent on Wednesday when he said the league has not ruled out that the use of a bubble in the playoffs. Vincent added that all options will be considered, although the league would also require an agreement with the players' union as well. The concept was discussed on our last competition committee call. Vincent told reporters on the call, "It is something that we are considering. All things are on the table, frankly, at this juncture during this fluid environment." How would postseason bubbles play out in the postseason? Interestingly, Vincent referred to the conceptual idea as more of a secure environment than a bubble. While he didn't reveal details, it was terminology that hints at what the NBA has done, essentially constructing a hardened zone where players are living and being monitored in hopes of maintaining protocols. How that would look for the NFL is another matter, although the league has plenty of experience to lean on considering how teams maintain themselves during a Super Bowl week. We'll see, bro. We'll see. Effectively, the NFL could create its own living zones for players that are similar to the Super Bowl setup, but also subtracting the social engagements and some of the personal freedoms that were doable in past years. Among the options, yeah, I mean, look, I mean, at the end of the day, that's the thing. Like I said, they would have to be 100% completely fucking isolated. Otherwise, it 100% is, you know, anyway, whatever. I mean, we're only a few weeks away, guys. Look, it's already August fucking 20th. We are, what, 10 days away, roughly, you know, from the end of the month. And so we're, what, 2.5, 3-ish weeks away from the first games played. The very first game, the Texans and the Chiefs, I believe, is played on the 10th. The Dolphins and every other team in the league will be playing on the 13th. We played the Patriots first game. So, first game of the year. So, we'll see, man. We'll see how it goes. I'm not convinced. This is one of those things. And look, people can call me negative if they want, but this is what the data suggests. I will be happy to be able to say that they proved me wrong, just like I will be happy to say, that the Dolphins proved me wrong in their, whatever, their path, their plans, their philosophies, and the things that they have done to get us to where we are today. All right, there is one more thing that I do want to talk about. And this is a report on Bleacher Report. Ryan Fitzpatrick is expected to be Dolphins starting quarterback over Tua Tagovailoa. As you guys know, I think that is smart. I don't think that they should play him at all this year, but that's me. It appears Tua Tagovailoa will begin his rookie season on the bench. Mike Garofalo, but let's just note that even though this is the case now, it could obviously change. So let's put that out there. Mike Garofalo of NFL Network reported the Dolphins are expected to name Ryan Fitzpatrick their Week 1 starter. Brian Flores comes from the Bill Belichick School of Competition. Garofalo said he wouldn't declare a starting quarterback in this competition this early, but the expectation is you're looking at the starter in Ryan Fitzpatrick. Garofalo noted the decision is not based on a desire to preserve Tagovailoa's health. The Alabama... But see, that should be the primary decision. Okay, I understand, like, and part of it, right, because Brian Flores came out and was like, he had some really good throws and good decisions, but he had some bad throws and bad decisions. Okay, that's expected. He's a rookie, right? And there's been, like, the whole offseason's been fucked, etc., etc. And I understand if you want to have those as part of your evaluation, right? If you don't feel that he's ready conceptually with the playbook or comfortable enough, obviously that's a wonderful factor to take into consideration, and you should. But the primary factor should be his health, and that's why I would unquestionably redshirt him during this first year, because I wouldn't want to take any chance. And if you really want to, you know, like, prop this dude up like he's going to be the savior of your franchise for the next fucking however long, don't take any fucking risks. And the mentality that, you know, the priorities there concerns me. Because then that tells me that, well, you know, maybe after a few weeks, once he kind of gets up to speed and he looks the part, then we can throw him in, even if, you know, he might not actually be ready, and or, you know, the offensive line might not be, you know, anywhere near adequate enough to protect him, and then he could get hurt. Anyway, whatever. We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. There is still a lot that needs to happen. The Alabama product is returning from a dislocated and fractured hip that prematurely ended his collegiate career. Flores has given Tagovailoa a mixed review thus far. Some good, some bad, Flores said per Safi Dean of the South Florida Sun-Sentinel. Some good throws and good decisions, some throws that aren't so good, and some decisions that weren't so good. Fitzpatrick started 13. Yeah, but I mean, you're going to get that out of Fitzpatrick. So, and that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why it obviously could change, right? Because if he tightens up over the next few weeks and starts really looking the part, you know, his talent obviously trumps Fitzpatrick's. Way fucking more talent than Fitzpatrick. That's not the question. It's never been the question. I have never denied that, right? The question is whether or not he's going to be healthy enough to be able to fucking hang out there, especially if the offensive line is trash, which unfortunately, the data would suggest far more highly that is going to be the case, right? Anyway, Fitzpatrick started 13 games for the Dolphins last season, throwing 3,529 yards, 20 interceptions against 20 touchdowns versus 13 interceptions. They had an error here, and that's why I read it that way. But see, and that's what I'm saying. 20 touchdowns to 13 interceptions. I mean, that's not stellar by any stretch of the imagination. So you're going to get good decisions and throws from Fitzpatrick, and you're going to also get terrible decisions and throws from Fitzpatrick. So that's why, like, just the simple fact that he said that does not at all in any way, shape, or form mean to me that he's not going to put... It could, and there could be other factors that are involved in his decision. But if his mentality is not revolved around his health, and the sole reasoning he gives is that, well, he's had some good throws and some bad throws, that in no way, shape, or form to me means that it's definitive Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to start. I think that would be the smart decision, though. Pro Football Focus gave him an overall grade of 76.5, and he was instrumental in leading the Dolphins to 5 wins at the end of the season. While no one ever would confuse the 37-year-old with being a franchise quarterback, he's a capable stopgap until the team is ready to hand the keys over to Tua, and I do agree with that. Fitzpatrick also has familiarity with offensive coordinator Chan Gailey. The pair were previously together during stints with the Jets and Bills. Let's note, though, that they weren't particularly stellar there, although... they did have a pretty solid relationship, and, you know, Fitzpatrick was able to put up some solid numbers. But his time with the Jets was not very impressive, definitely. I don't really recall off the top of my head about Chan Gailey's time with the Bills. Anyway, whatever. With that, I'm going to get up out of here. I hope you guys appreciate my perspectives. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.